You've probably heard the name Jonathan Cahn. His books have sold millions, all built on this incredible idea that America is hidden in ancient biblical prophecies. But what if the way he connects those dots is just, well, wrong? That's what we're digging into today, a really detailed critique of his work. So, let's start with the big question at the heart of all this. Is America actually in the Bible's prophecies? I mean, is it a nation with a special divine destiny? This is the very idea that's made Jonathan Cahn so popular, but it's also sparked a ton of debate. He's a firm yes, but a lot of people are starting to say, hang on a second, and are really questioning that whole foundation. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to look at who Cahn is, what his whole Prophet for America thing is about. Then we'll dive into the critique of his connections, some of the errors in thinking that are pointed out, and finally, we'll land on this call for discernment. Okay, first section. A prophet for America? So who exactly is Jonathan Cahn? Well, he's a Messianic Jewish pastor. That means he's Jewish and believes Jesus is the Messiah. And back in 2011, he wrote this book, The Harbinger, that just exploded. It made him a huge name. And the core of it, the thing that really got everyone's attention, was his claim that the 9/11 attacks weren't just a random act of terror. He said they were a divine warning, a harbinger from God, that directly mirrored events from the Old Testament. And this right here is the absolute heart of his message. It's this idea of a parallel between America and ancient Israel. Cahn's whole argument hinges on the belief that America, just like Israel, is a nation in a special covenant, kind of like a sacred contract with God. So from his perspective, when America's morals decline, it's not just a social issue. No, it's a spiritual crisis. He's saying we're repeating a pattern, walking the exact same path that led to divine judgment for Israel way back when. All right, let's switch gears and get into the critique itself. The source we're looking at really starts to deconstruct the very connections that Cahn is so famous for. First up is this harbinger concept. So what is it? The idea is pretty straightforward. Modern events, especially things like 9/11, are not random. They are prophetic warnings, harbingers from God. And crucially, they're supposed to be mirrors of the signs that were given to ancient Israel right before its destruction. It's like history is repeating itself as a divine warning. Now, this verse right here, Isaiah 9:10, this is everything. This is the absolute foundation of Cahn's book, The Harbinger. He argues that this quote isn't just some dusty old line from the Bible. He says it's a script of national pride and defiance in the face of attack. And here's the kicker. He claims that American leaders after 9/11 repeated this script, sometimes almost word for word, without even realizing it. Okay, but here's where the critique really pushes back. The source we're examining says this is a classic case of taking a verse completely out of context. See, in its original setting, this was a super specific warning to the northern kingdom of Israel after they got invaded by Assyria. The critique argues that Cahn lifts this verse out of its specific historical moment and applies it to the United States, a connection the original text just doesn't make. And the critique keeps going. Next up is the Shemitah. Now, Cahn claims that this ancient agricultural law for Israel, basically a rule about letting fields rest every 7 years, is somehow a prophetic key to modern global finance. He connects it to major stock market crashes. The source, though, calls this out as totally speculative. There's just no historical or textual basis, they argue, for connecting an ancient farming law to the Dow Jones. So you can see the critique is shifting now, from just challenging the facts to actually questioning Cahn's whole way of thinking. Let's look at these alleged errors in his logic. All right, here's a big one. The critique accuses Cahn of something called eisegesis. It sounds complicated, but it's actually a pretty simple idea. Proper interpretation, or exegesis, is about drawing the meaning out of the text. What did the original author intend? But eisegesis is the opposite. It's when you read your own ideas into the text. So the accusation here is that Cahn already has this idea about America and prophecy, and he's just making the Bible fit his theory, instead of the other way around. And that leads into a whole host of what the source calls logical fallacies. For example, the false analogy. Is it really fair to compare ancient Israel, a theocracy, with the modern United States, a democratic republic? The critics say, no way. Another huge one they point out is the post hoc fallacy, or false cause. This is basically assuming that just because one thing happened after another, the first thing must have caused the second. And this slide is a perfect breakdown of that post hoc fallacy in action, especially with his Shemitah theory. So you have event A, a Shimata year happens. Then you have event B, a stock market crash happens around the same time. The flawed conclusion that Cahn draws, according to the critique, is that event A caused event B. It's that classic error we all learn about: correlation does not equal causation. The source also brings up cognitive bias, specifically confirmation bias. You know what this is, right? It's our tendency to see what we already want to see. It's like if you believe all cars are red, you'll start noticing every red car on the road and ignore all the blue and green ones. The argument is that Cahn does this with history. He focuses only on the financial dips that line up with his Shemitah cycle and kind of ignores all the ones that don't. So, after laying out all these critiques of the facts, the methods, and the logic, where does this leave us? What's the final takeaway from the source? Let's get to the call for discernment. What's really interesting here is that the source isn't just throwing everything out. It actually highlights points of agreement, things like the authority of the Bible, the importance of repentance, the concept of divine judgment. But where the conflict comes in is with the methodology. The critique draws a very clear line, saying Kahn's interpretation is too selective, his application of prophecy is speculative, and he misapplies historical context. It's a critique of how he gets his conclusions, not necessarily the basic theological principles. Ultimately, the path forward suggested by the source isn't about attacking a person. It's really a call for everyone to be more discerning. It's about emphasizing solid, rigorous interpretation of the text, not just picking out verses that seem to fit. It's a push for critical thinking and grounding faith in sound reasoning, rather than getting swept up in what might just be a series of coincidences. So this whole breakdown has been based on the critique presented by advanced apologetics research, and it leaves us with a really important question, not just about this topic, but about everything we consume. In a world that is just flooded with information and amazing, compelling stories, what does it really take to tell the difference between a meaningful pattern and what might just be wishful thinking?